Hey everybody, I'm Frank Padgett and I'm 57 years old.
And I'm Ashley Padgett, and I'm 31.
And we've created this series called Conversations with My Daughter. This is a space where a father, that's me, and my daughter,
That's me.
we sit down and we talk about real life as it really happens.
We talk about faith, family, relationships, failures, successes, legacy, and everything in between.
No scripts, no pretending, just real conversations.
So, whether you're navigating your own timeline, figuring out your relationships, or just learning through setbacks, we hope we add something of value to you.
All right, let's get into it.
All right, hi guys. Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with My Daughter. This is a good one. Today we'll be talking about the difference between confidence and control, which it's a very fine line between confidence and control.
That's right.
We're mainly going to be focusing on emotional intelligence and maturity. So, what do you have to say about that? What were we talking about before we started the camera?
That's a very good question, and this is a very, very hot topic, and especially as you get into the issue of emotional intelligence, because it seems to be flying around the internet nowadays. People, they want what they want, but they fail to understand in many cases exactly what emotional intelligence is.
Yeah.
So I think the topic that we're going to deal with today, a lot of people, especially emotional intelligence generally gets applied to based on what I've seen, people being in relationships. And they say, well, I want this and I want this. I want this type of person and this. They have all of these requirements. And it's generally like women who are saying these things, right? So I'm not trying to be sexist at all. But I really hear like women saying these things, which is fine. And because I think that every woman should have standards. Every man should have standards. So I applaud that. You have standards. But the one thing that I will say, I think that it's okay for you to have standards, but the requirements that you have to understand these are your preferences, and other people might have preferences as well.
Yeah.
So I didn't know we were jumping right into this like this here, but
I told you it's good topic.
But that being said, so take for example the person who says, I need somebody to match me. And I hear, you don't generally hear men saying that. You generally hear women saying that. I get the point. And they say, I need a man that he's so tall and, he makes so much money and he looks a certain way and, he has to have emotional intelligence. Well, that's good. Great standard to have, by the way. But the question is, are you emotional? Do you display emotional intelligence as well? Because the same way you have standards and your preferences, that person that you're looking for has the exact same thing. And he may say, well, I don't want, I want someone and they have to be of a certain size. And, most men don't care about how many degrees a woman has, and they don't care about how much money she makes. And there's a reason for that, and because it is innate within all men to be the providers and protectors. So if you make a good salary, that's great. We don't say don't do that.
Yeah.
But we don't like lean in and say, oh yeah, she got to make X amount of. We don't care about that.
Yeah.
Because it's our responsibility to be able to take care of her, because and she will become a wife and who will produce children and will be able to raise these children to be productive citizens, and we can create legacy. That's what men think about. So there's nothing wrong with having standards. I think on both sides, both people need to have standards. And that's another thing too. Can I say this? I know it's the internet,
I mean,
but some people need to have some standards. Some people need to have some standards because they don't have no standards.
yeah.
It's just like I look at some of the things that people say, and I understand people want to be free, and that's fine. But there's a cost that comes with that, with freedom, what we call freedom.
Yeah.
There are consequences, good consequences, there are bad consequences. And I will say that I said this to your mother the other day. I said, you know what? And I was talking to another buddy of mine. I said, we need to bring shame back. Shame needs to come back in 2026. God, please bring shame back. Not to shame anybody, not to put a scarlet letter on anybody. But there was decency has almost gone out the window. And people, some people, not all people, some people feel like I can do what I want to do, how I want to do it, and there are no repercussions, as a result of it. So this gets back to that whole emotional intelligence issue and that whole maturity issue. We're, as humans, we're ever evolving. We're continually maturing. Hopefully, as we get older, we become a bit wiser. Hopefully. But we need to bring shame back. We need to bring shame back. So
we need to bring shame back.
I'm just saying.
Quote from my dad.
I'm just saying. Don't get mad at her. Y'all can get mad at me. But we need to bring shame back, not for the purpose of just outing people, but for the purpose of just being the decent humans that God has created us to be. Because we have to remember, many people have children. Their children are watching them and how they conduct themselves and things of that nature. I mean, you know this. I was on a board of a rather large charter school, and for about 11 years. When I left, I was the vice chairman of the board, and one of the things, I talked to a lot of parents, and we just handled like the governance of the school. We managed our own budget and stuff, but I would talk to a lot of parents, and the parents, I would emphasize to them how important their voice is. And I would tell them, say, listen, don't just come to the school complaining about thus and so. Yeah. Johnny didn't do this. Oh no, he did. And he bad. He bad. So I need you to work with Johnny, because you can't expect these teachers to be able to produce this perfect child and send them home to you if you at home are not willing to put in the work and the effort to help Johnny or Johnette understand discipline and responsibility. So I'm just saying all of that because this goes wide and deep, and we need to make sure that we are understanding that there are people who are watching the lives that we live. So we got to be careful with that, because at the end of the day, the good times that we're having and stuff like that, they run out. But people always remember those things, and like, you were doing this and you were doing that. So we all have legacies to develop and to grow and to protect. So to help you protect your legacy, exercise a bit of decorum when it comes to certain issues. I'll say I'll leave that part like that.
Okay. It's going a little left.
I did not expect that.
All right, so back to emotional intelligence. And this is something that I have personally dealt with, letting go of outcomes.
Yes.
Because I have lost friends over the years. I don't even know if I should talk about this, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Well, just be careful, because there are people that
I'm not naming names. Yeah. But my last relationship, after it ended well. It was like peaceful and we were all good. And then he texted me, was like, I want someone who has more emotional intelligence than you. And that blindsided me. And I was like, okay. And then we were fine again for about a year. And then he texted me and he was saying, I don't want to be friends anymore.
Okay.
Out of the blue.
Okay.
And I'm just like, it got me thinking, because what had happened, and this kind of goes into another topic that we're talking about, men and women and compartmentalization. I think we kind of compartmentalize things a little differently.
Yes, indeed.
Because I remember you were saying, I think it was either yesterday or a few days ago, men take longer to get over relationships than women.
Yeah.
For me, after the breakup, I was like, okay, switch mode. We're going straight back to friends. It's not, I already know it's not going to be the same, but I can see you as just a friend. And I don't think he ever saw me as just a friend anymore. So I was kind of blindsided, and it was just like, I kind of wish that we had that conversation in person.
Right.
But I can understand why he did it the way that he did it. But it's still kind of hard, like letting go of like that situation, and because for some reason I keep replaying the situation in my head, and I'm doing like different scenarios. Like, if we had this conversation, this is how it would go. If we had this conversation, this is how it would go. So it's, I don't know. It's just.
It's tough, and it is a lot. It's tough, and it's one of those things that happens in life. You mentioned something, and we've had this conversation several times, just about the difference between men and women, and how men look at relationships and how women look at relationships. It's not that women aren't hurt by relationships. They get hurt deeply.
Yeah.
They get hurt deeply. But I think one of the things that people don't necessarily realize is that, you know, when a man gets in a relationship and he wants to be committed in that relationship, and that relationship doesn't work out, he's generally devastated. Yeah. He generally takes it harder. And as I shared with you before, one of the reasons why is because we as men, and this is just the world we live in, we are women, as I've said to you, are generally are born with value. Okay, we as men, our society judges us based on what we can do, and that determines our value. Now, some people may say, well, that's not fair. Well, that's just the world we live in. Yeah. That's not a new thing. You know, men have always been judged on what they can provide, what they can perform. So, you know, when men don't have access to women as readily as women have access to men, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, because we look at women, men look at women differently. We don't have all of these requirements. You know, she's got to be a certain height and all this other stuff. If she just has a great personality, and she's a nurturing person, and she's a person that will listen, and a person that will allow the man to lead, you know, and that's another issue too, all this submission stuff, and you know, I think that gets taken out of context, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But her opportunities for to be in another relationship are far greater than a man's opportunity to be in another relationship. You know, it's just one of those things. I mean, I'll give you a quick example, and everybody out there, they know this. If men and women are at a gathering, right, and there's a bunch of women there, there's a bunch of men there. Most men are very intimidated to go up and just, as they say, shoot their shot at a woman. The reason being is because the rejection is very real. You know, it's like, but a woman, on the other hand, it's not that most women will approach men. Some will, you know, some won't. But you know, you all have a different way of just how you approach men, or how you allow men to approach you. I'll put it like that. how you allow men to approach you. So it's this game that's been played since the beginning of time, of how men approach women and stuff like that. And then back in the day, that when there were wars and this tribe was conquering that tribe, what happens? I mean, the spoils go to the victor.
Yeah.
So whoever the guys were that won, they were the ones who got all of the spoils. So I'll just say, so if there were women, if there were children or whomever, the men, they picked whatever they want. And the women knew that in order for us to survive, in order for our children to survive, well, we got to go with them. Mm-hmm. So it's just one of those things, but it's been here since the beginning of time.
Okay. Let's talk about leading self before leading others. I think that kind of goes back to something that we talked about in an earlier episode, about like people pleasing and not having time for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like it goes back to that. But the whole idea of leading others and leading yourself instead of like, what do you think about that?
Well, the leadership is very important. It's not necessarily different between the sexes, but it's approached differently. If that makes any sense. I will say this. So, your mother has this big heart. It's big heart. And she wants to help everybody. Listen, y'all, my wife, she want to help everybody. She want to help she will help you before she help me. She want to help everybody, which it's just no problem. She's always been like that. The only issue is that sometimes when you put yourself out there like that to help everybody, you kind of forget yourself and who you are. So you know how you get on the plane and they're doing, like, before the plane takes off, and they doing the whole briefing of the safety briefing or whatever. And for one thing, one of the things that they say is, if there's any issues, the oxygen mask will fall out of the ceiling, and put your oxygen mask on first before you go to help somebody else. Unfortunately, many people in life, they don't put their own oxygen mask on. So as they're out there helping other people, the other people are sucking up all of the oxygen in the room, and they're sitting there suffocating. And they're wondering why they're suffocating. They never put their oxygen mask on. And then they're getting mad because the person with holding on for dear life, trying to suck up as much oxygen as they possibly can. And they're like, well, you're not going to share. And they're like pointing to, like, put your own oxygen mask on. But a lot of times people aren't even thinking that, oh, I forgot to put my own oxygen mask on. And as a result, sometimes relationships end, and, people say, oh, they don't support me, and I do all of this stuff for them. And, a lot of times it's not that people don't support you. You may approach how you are governing the relationship in the wrong fashion. You may be neglecting yourself, and it doesn't look like you're neglecting yourself. So in order for you to help somebody else, you have to be strong enough to help somebody else. So I don't know if that answers the question, but those are just my thoughts.
It kind of does, but why do you think people do that? The people who choose to help everybody else and forget about themselves. I think it's like a need to be like wanted, or a need to just be like helpful in a sense.
We've had this discussion before, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's this human need to be needed, and sometimes that's done. People want to help other people out of genuine concern. Sometimes people want to help people, it may be out of genuine concern, but it may be layered with their need to be needed, but they may not know how to communicate that, and maybe they don't need to communicate that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, But again, if we get things out of balance too much, that's where we have the problems.
So that kind of goes into the next topic, strength versus rigidity.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very fine line between strength and rigidity,
Mm-hmm.
and it can come across as two different things. So let's say somebody, a strong person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Strong person holding it all together, but they start basically not really commanding people, but I don't really know how to say it, but it just comes off as, well, you're basically telling me what to do and I'm my own person. And that can be like a rigid environment.
I got you. I think
if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I think one of the most important things is in every relationship, regardless of how the relationship is structured, there always has to be elasticity.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, there's some people they're just so rigid and just their thinking, and at the end of the day, being just totally rigid in your thinking is not necessarily good, because I'm going to tell you why. Because we as humans, we are ever evolving. You know, we all say, and I've been saying this lately, it's like, man, I wish that I would have known what I know now 25 years ago. Everybody says that. But if I am just so rigidly focused, I don't even give and what I am essentially saying is that I've grown so much over that 25 years, and I'm learning so much more. But if a person is so rigid in their thinking, they don't even give themselves the ability to grow anymore. So they end up stifling their growth simply because they feel like being rigid is the way that they need to be, but not understanding that as humans, we are ever evolving. And we don't know what we don't know. And we should be learning something each and every day until it's our last day. So
I guess that goes back to our first topic.
Okay.
Emotional maturity.
Yes.
Because it is very hard, and I've experienced this. It is very hard just sitting in your emotions and letting your emotions play out.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned over many years, to not just push my emotions to the back burner and just keep going, because they come up and there's blowouts and destruction, and it's not anything that I necessarily did. It's just something triggered a moment that I never really dealt with in the past. So I've been learning how to sit with my emotions. But I guess I'll say in the past, I was a little rigid in my thinking about, well, I don't want my emotions to control this, so I'm just going to not even deal with it. But I guess now, the fluidity in my thinking, I'm like, okay, well, now I need to just like sit in my emotions and just let them play out, because I have years worth of emotional trauma that has been building, like literally like 20 years worth of emotional trauma that's been building, that I've been just trying to like play out and just like sit with and think about and talk through. And it helps a lot.
Well, if you remember years ago, we were, and I'm gonna say this, and I hope that it will help somebody even more than us. Years ago, we went to we did some family counseling, right? And it was all centered around some medical issues that we were dealing with in the family at the time, right? And I remember we did like several sessions, and I remember we would go into the therapist's office, and the first time I went in, it was eye-opening to me. And this was even before the session started, because there was a chart that she had up on the wall, and the chart had all of the human emotions, all of the human emotions, and So everything from joy and sadness to anything you can any depression and all of these different human emotions. And it got me to thinking, even before the session started, I'm like, wow, none of those human emotions were created by us.
Yeah.
So our creator, God, put all of those human emotions in us, in everybody,
Yeah.
to be experienced at different points in life.
Mm.
And then, as we were talking about things, and she pointed to the chart, and she would start off, well, she would go around the table. There's four of us, and she'll go around the table, and she'll go, well, how do you feel? And how do you feel? You remember that?
Yeah, I always hated that question. That's what turned me off from therapy for
Yeah.
years. I'm like, I don't like the question. How does that make you feel all
Yeah.
the time? And when I don't have an answer, they always push.
Yeah.
But why don't you have an answer? I'm like, I just don't have an answer right now.
So every time she would get to me last. Generally, I would generally be the last person, and my answer was always the same. She was like, well, how do you feel? I was like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
She was like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, what do you mean, what does it mean? I'm fine.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, and I was generally fine. And basically what I was saying to her and to you all is like, okay, this is where we find ourselves dealing with this, the issues that we were dealing with. And I just am like, look, I don't understand it. I don't have to understand it. I'm trusting God in this, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So as long as he's sitting on the throne, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that I'm just so much more mature than everybody else. No, because I don't know what tomorrow holds. But whatever it holds, he's brought us through this far. He's going to continue to take us to the end, whatever the end is. So, but the one thing that I gained from those sessions, I gained a lot. Number one, I got a chance to hear how things have really affected your mother. I got a chance to hear how things affected you, how it affected your brother. I needed to hear that because that's not something that we talk about. But in those sessions, one of the things that I walked away with, one of the other things I walked away with was these emotions that God gave us that we are going to experience at different points in life. All of those emotions are there for a reason. And that reason is to keep us as humans balanced.
Yeah.
If someone is depressed all the time, they're imbalanced. Now, I didn't say you can't be depressed for a season. I'm not going to put a time on how long that season lasts. That season can last for years.
Yeah.
It can last for years. So it doesn't mean like, oh, I'm depressed, so tomorrow I need to be happy. No, a season can last for years.
Yeah.
But there's a point to the season because there's going to be a season of joy. But if somebody is always joyous, like nothing ever goes wrong, and they're just like, oh, happy, watch out for that person because that person's not balanced.
It's kind of like the movie Inside Out, the first one, where Riley, who was the main character in Inside Out, she had, I think, like 5 different emotions: joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear. And joy, that was her main emotion because joy thought that she could run everything. And she didn't realize what she was doing was actually stifling Riley. And she was pretty much making her depressed because she was like seen as happy all the time.
I got you.
And when all the other emotions tried to cut in, Joy was like, no, you don't belong here.
Right.
And that's kind of like how I felt for a long time because I always used to think, well, not always, but I used to think a lot that anger was a bad emotion.
No.
So I would try not to get angry. I don't really cry at things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say I thought the sadness was a bad emotion either, but it takes me a long while to cry. I haven't cried in years, and that's whatever. But it's really the anger, because it takes a lot for me to get angry. I don't just like fly off the wall at a random comment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of that reasoning is because I always think that anger is a bad emotion, because I've seen what anger can do.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want to go down that road.
Well, it's interesting because, and I didn't know we were going to get all into this, but I think this is good. I think this can help somebody. No emotion within itself is bad. There's nothing wrong with being depressed. There's nothing wrong with being angry. There's nothing wrong with all of these. There's nothing wrong with being happy and joyous and all these other emotions that are out there. Fearful. There's nothing wrong with that. That's all a part of the human experience. Yeah. The problem is that when those emotions are used in the wrong way. So you mentioned anger, right? There's nothing wrong with angry. Even the Bible says, be angry and sin not. So it didn't say you couldn't be angry.
Yeah.
Just don't sin in your anger.
Yeah.
Don't allow your anger to cause you to do something that you're going to regret later.
Yeah.
So the emotion of anger, or whatever that emotion is, within itself, it's actually a good thing, because it actually what word do I want to say? It actually validates our humanity. God gave us all of these things. So because of that, we can't look at it as like, oh, well, I'm just so angry. Now, you mentioned something, you said, well, you don't cry. Listen, I'm the guy, and I'm not afraid to say this. When I see certain things, it'll just bring me to tears. Oh my goodness. It'll good. I've seen I remember I was looking at these YouTube videos. There was a homeless guy, and just like you looking at this, it brings me to tears. Just like, oh God. It's just like, no, but I mean, but for me, it's just like, there's nothing wrong with expressing your emotions. Now, you know me, I'm not gonna be around here. Oh, I'm just, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with expressing the emotions that God has given, but we just have to make sure that those emotions do not rule us. Yeah. Like some people are like, well, I don't want to be fearful, and you can't be fearful. That's a part. And they think that being fearful, not being fearful, is somehow being, I'm just so confident.
Yeah.
Everybody's fearful.
Yeah.
You're fearful of something, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just lets us know that we're really human.
Yeah.
And fear, but what fear does, it causes you to think about what your next move needs to be. Not just like, I'm fearful, because what fear will do, if you allow it to overcome you and take control of you, fear has the tendency to immobilize you.
Yeah.
So because it immobilizes you, it paralyzes you, so to speak. And you don't do anything. Yeah. But then you're just stuck there, compared to like, okay, I don't know what the next steps are going to be. And this goes back to like letting go of outcomes. Just do the things that you feel are the right things to do, and the outcome is going to be whatever the outcome is going to be. And you will survive another day, and you'll grow from that experience. So, I'll end this portion on this. We're in the gym 5 days a week, right? We're doing this 6-week challenge again, all right? And in the gym, I'm looking at you, and you're like, oh, my shoulder. Oh. And you're just working out in the gym, giving it your all. Yeah. And I'm looking over at you. I'm like, Ashley, you okay? You okay? Yeah, I'm good. The point is that I forgot my point.
I think the point is, well, the reason I say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just trying to get through the workout.
Oh, I know.
If
I
my
know.
shoulder hurts, it's gonna hurt regardless. I'm just trying to get through the workout. I may lower the weights, I may use no weights, but look, I'm just trying to get through the workout.
Yeah, but I brought that point up, but I forgot my point. So yeah, I apologize, y'all. I forgot my point. I got distracted for a moment there. I forgot my point. So, but anyway.
Well, I will bring up my point for you saying that.
Okay.
I think it's about knowing your body, knowing your strength, and knowing that what you can only do what you can. Well, not really. You can only do what you can control, because that don't really make sense. But you can control how far you push yourself.
Right.
And for me, I mean, I kind of push myself to almost the point of death, but that's another.
She pushes herself too hard, way too hard at times, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, hey, you got to save some for tomorrow.
Yeah.
This isn't, as they say, the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. I don't care how much you're in the gym, you're not going to build it all in a day. So you just be consistent about doing the work. And that's not just in the gym, that's just in life, just in the things we do in life. Be consistent about doing the work, and the results that you're looking for will show up in time. But you just have to be patient with that process.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to end this here. I think that we should do a part 2.
Let's do it.
I want to really dive deep into the reason I do not cry.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
There's a deep reason for that.
Oh my goodness.
It goes back years, but we're gonna do a part 2. So stay tuned for that. Like we always say, please let us know what you would like us to talk about in the comments. Drop in the comments anything that you want us to know. If this episode touched you, if this episode resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, share it. And yeah, I'm Ashley, I'm daughter.
And I'm Frank, I'm dad. And but let me say this before we get out of here, because one thing we didn't touch on, and we can catch it in part 2. There was one thing we were going to cover as what men want. So men and ladies, if you're out there and you want to know what men want, we're going to talk about that as well.
Yeah.
So that should be exciting. Nobody asked that question, but we're going to talk about it.
All right. Well, we will see you guys in the next episode. God bless.
God bless. Take care.